Okay. Oh, well, we're live streaming, folks, and so just to open the public agenda for the 28th of February, I only have one apology at this stage, which is Grant, who said he was going to be a little bit late. Would somebody like to authorise those? Trish, thank you. Barry? Any further declarations of interest? There being none. The public forum is yours, Nicol, and welcome to our meeting. You'll find that we're very informal. Good that you brought a team, and Darren will explain those comments later on.
Kia tēnā koutou katoa. Look, I'm just going to do a bit of high-level stuff and hand over to staff, but great to be here to have a conversation about climate resilient projects here today. And I guess after what we've seen in the North Island and Hawke's Bay in particular in the last couple of weeks, it does bring it into high focus. And you know, what we're doing now is sort of the short-term stuff where we know there's high risk, but eventually we're going to have a long-term catchment-wide strategy for all our catchments. Congratulations for the work that you've done on the at Stead Street, but we know we're going to have to work together for the future. And a lot of the stuff funding will be intergenerational. I probably won't say too much more than that, but Southlanders are pretty good at working together, as we've seen in the North Island. Our turn will come again, and we have to be ready. But I'll hand over to Paul to lead you into that. Well, I better introduce the rest of the team. We've got Paul Hulse. We've got Gail here from Comms, Pete McDonald, Councillor, Linda Ludlow, Councillor, and Tess from staff as well. But the floor is yours.
Kia ora, thank you. Thank you for allowing us to come and present. My name's Paul Hulse. I'm the General Manager for Integrated Catchment Management. I think I've been at ES for 2 years now. Time flies. I think when I first got here, I got the challenge of picking up the climate resilience program. It's quite a big program across the region, but I note that it's probably, I've never been here to present, so that's 2 years. So it's quite timely to come today and give you an update on the specific infrastructure projects that we're doing in Invercargill. So thank you for that. Do I press the buttons, or will it scroll? Okay. Really, this slide, just in terms of context, you are well aware this was a government funded infrastructure program across the country. You were one part of that, and again, to the chair's comments, all credit to you to get your Stead Street project, flood wall, completed. We've still got some projects that we're still doing as part of that wider program. If we go to the next slide, if that's okay. So the Invercargill City Bank stop grade, you can read that for yourself, but really we're focusing on the true left-hand side of the Waihopai. The work underway is to sort of protect, further stabilise the stop bank. We're looking to widen the base and slightly increase the level. So in the future, that if we wanted to increase the height of the stop banks again in the future, that we would have that wide base to do it. It will also give us a 1 in 100 year level of service protection, which is good in the context of the climate change challenges that we're facing. And also, I think you might have picked up in the press, we talk a lot about the interdecadal Pacific oscillation phenomenon, which really means that for the next 20 years, we're going to be in a negative phase of that weather phenomenon. It means we're likely to have longer lasting floods at a higher level, perhaps like you experienced in the late 70s and 80s. So we're expecting that we're going to get some more events that are going to test the infrastructure as we move on. Probably worth touching on the true right-hand side. The right-hand side, we prioritised the work to protect the city and the CBD. We also have a 1 in 100 year level of service for the right-hand side. So that allows us to develop through our sort of master plan approach, our data that we'll develop over the next few months and years, to determine what extra work we can do in the whole catchment. And so that work, provided government funding is available or through our long-term plan conversations, that work could also take place. But what we're hoping to achieve through the Invercargill stock bank upgrade is obviously increasing the in protection on the left-hand side, which is really important. I go to the next slide. Really, that's just a slide just to show you the type of work that we're doing, the type of fill and rock protection work that will happen. I won't dwell too much on that, but if you go to the next slide, the Stead Street pump station. This is a huge project. You will have seen it, no doubt, at the side of Stead Street, right next to they work in tandem. There's a gap in the flood wall that you've kindly left for us that we can put our pipes through, and we will close that hole up when that pipe's gone through. But really, this infrastructure is marked improvement on what we've had since I think the 1950s, when they originally built to protect predominantly farmland. Now we're protecting other important assets as well as farmland through that pump station. It's an $11 million project, and it's partly funded by Canoa and Environment Southland, and will give us, I think, I'm probably going to ask you to go to the next slides, because I think you can see some of the groundwork there. One of the riskiest points of the program was to get out of the ground. As you probably know yourselves, it's not the it's difficult ground conditions there, and so it was a real risk to be in a position where we're out of the ground and looking to do the built work. But I can safely say that that's happening now. The new pump station will be able to operate at higher flood levels. So the old pump station, effectively, when it floods, the pumps get flooded. We're much higher off the ground. The Archimedes screws can pump more water out. They're fish friendly. We're compliant with the National Environment Standards for fish passage, and really we'll have a real long life servicing this community and other ratepayers and the airport for many years to come, and operationally much cheaper to maintain and manage than the old pump station. So it's quite an important piece of infrastructure going in there. If you go to the next slide, to give you a sense of scale, that's the size. There's two of these screws going in that will be fish friendly and also make sure that the Lake Hawkins area isn't inundated. So they will continue to work and pump flood water, or drainage water more accurately. If we go to the next slide, if you go down just one, if that's okay. An important part of our kind of BAU work is our flood defence maintenance. We do a range of activities around the stock banks to make sure that we keep them in as best a condition as we can. Spraying, grass mowing. One of probably the most contemporary pieces of work that we've done is the tree removals. And so the reason for that is that the stock banks are there to keep the community safe from floods. They're not multifunctional. We're lucky that recreationally we can use them. But trees, fences in flood events can topple. They can create holes in the stock banks. The roots can rot away and create channels in the stock banks that the water can pass through and create piping and leakage issues. And effectively, if not managed, can create stock bank failure. And they're there to protect communities. So we've recently been through the Waihopai and removed some trees. We are in other areas doing the same thing in Gore and Wyndham. Not something particularly enjoy taking trees down. I know people are passionate about trees, and rightly so. One of the things that I've sort of made a commitment to is for every tree that we take out, we're going to replace another tree in a more suitable location. We've got the Southland Riparian Planting Programme that we manage and operate, that we will do that. And really, the challenges for us as an organisation is trying to pass the messages around that it's not just cutting trees down for trees' sake. They actually can be quite risky in the wrong place, and so that's the reason. Looking ahead on the last slide, I'm trying to wrap this up as quickly as I can because you may have some questions. We talk about a master plan approach. I alluded to it at the beginning, where we're constantly going to need to strive for more data and information to make the right choices. And I suppose the reach or the statement I've got for you today as an organisation is we want to continue to work with you as an organisation around how we work in unison around our flood management responsibilities. And we would like to come back to you in the future when we've got some more of our hydrological data or our bathymetric data that will help us inform what decisions to make around the next lot of investments in Invercargill and other areas. So we see you as a key partner in that conversation, and I'd like to come, when we've got the data, to come back and share that with you. We are working together makes obvious sense, and your infrastructure works in unison with our infrastructure, so those things need to continue. And like I say, it'll be an opportunity, should there be any other funding available from the government or potentially through our respective LTPs now and in the future, that we could work together on future projects. I'll leave it at that. I think we've covered quite a lot, and I know that you've got a busy schedule, so happy to take questions.
Yep, so a couple for you before Tom puts his hand up. Welcome, Grant. The well-being of the estuary, the other side of the stop bank, is that something you manage, or we should manage, or collectively we should manage?
Get the question?
The estuary, the well-being of the estuary, and cool. Yeah.
Obviously, that is part of the catchment, and part of it will be us. We've got an old historic dump site that's still causing issues, legacy issue, which we're happy to work with you guys to do something about going forward. But some of the conversations have been around, would some strategic dredging help? Those decisions haven't been made, but at the end of the day, we're going to have to look at things through fresh eyes. Did a pretty good job after '84, but with what we're seeing in the North Island at the moment, we might have had them in the past, but more likely to have them more regularly. So we've got to have plans. We've got land we own that's to be sacrificed to save Invercargill, but will that be enough going forward? I know in Napier, part of the shovel ready, they built a 500-year return flood bank close to Napier. It's still overtopped, probably saved a lot of lives, but this is basically what we're dealing with today, is actually planning ahead for the next 20 or 30 years, and really happy to work with you.
Yep.
If I may, Mayor, through you, I know from a staff perspective, we're sharing information on the estuary and working together, and happy to continue that approach with ICC. So if there is future projects or funding that's required, that we can be happy to continue that conversation.
I mean, it's no secret that Liz Craig MP's been working on trying to create some boundary, I guess, around that, between that old historical dump and the estuary, where there's still a lot of leaching. I just wonder whether there's an opportunity for us collectively to head down the government track at some stage to sort of say, do we have some funding that could help remediate that? My second question is more of a political one, so it's probably for Nicol more than anybody else. Just wonder what your view was. When we look at the future of local government, I hear quite a bit of chatter behind the scenes in the political parties that would suggest, while amalgamation is not on the agenda, and the review may not go anywhere other than onto a shelf, I guess. Is there a future for the regional authority to be not only environmental but also climate change? Do you think, is that a natural fit?
Well, as you know, Nobby, the Mayoral Forum has us to lead the climate change advance, but everybody working together, so that's not going to change. We've dealt with rivers for years. In some ways, in the last 100 years, we've straightened them and put up flood banks, but we're going to have to think a bit harder about that, because we can't continue to just put stop banks higher and higher. So it's actually where can the water go? When we get the events that we know we'll eventually have. But we're certainly up for that. But it is combined. We've all got. It's a bit like, I use the emergency management setup we've got in Southland, which is probably the envy of a lot of areas. Everybody's got skin in the game. We've got dedicated staff, and I think that's a good model going forward.
Yeah, it's certainly been my reflection, is that councils tend to look for opportunities to be ticking a few boxes on climate change, but there's nothing coordinated. As a region, where I would have thought the regional council would be the ideal place to get some uniformity of effort
Well, we've just formed a committee which will have a representative at a governance level as well as staff. So
Sure.
that is the plan. We need to have a regional approach. Otherwise, you're going to have people doubling up. So right behind you on that.
Yeah, thank you. Tom? No, hang on, Barry, I got you.
I mean, we all know money's finite and we're never going to have enough of it. That it really means that we have to do the right projects, and that means the ones that data tells us are, where our critical vulnerabilities are.
Mm.
And I think there's a risk and maybe a temptation to just go on and do stuff, whereas it's got to be the right stuff. But my question is whether there are actually any very obvious targets that we should be doing, the bleeding obvious that don't require a whole lot of data, or would you support what I said first, that we really got to get the data first?
Yeah, well, that's exactly right. I think the Carnoa funding came at a time where perhaps across the country was 30 years of not a lot of investment in the infrastructure, so there was a desire to get on and do as much as possible with that money. And you're right, we brought work forward. What it's taught us is data is everything, and the right data. I talk about hydrological data, and it's a term, but actually, if you see hydrological data and the way that it can inform the way, let's use the model to put stock banks up a certain level, and let's put a certain event through it and see how it performs. That certainly gets you to a place where, well, hey, that's the infrastructure we need to invest in because it's going to make the right protection. Totally supportive of those comments, and that's really what I want to do next time I come back, is to bring that data, share it with you, and say, well, okay, we're going to look at other projects. What does the data tell us? I don't think there's any. It's always challenging stuff. This stuff, stock banks look simple, but they're actually well engineered, and talented people make them happen. I don't think there's any real low hanging fruit than the stuff that we've got on the table. But I'm hopeful for more funding, and I'm hopeful that will result in more protection for Invercargill as we go forward. But yeah, I'll take your comments.
And I think what we've seen in the North Island, I think the government will put more money on an ongoing basis into this sort of climate resilience space. Whether we'll get any money in the next year or two, I'm not sure. You can see what's the devastation in the North Island, and some of it would have happened anyway, but lessons have to be learned.
Alan?
Just one question I had. When I look at the pump station, which I go past several times a day, it's pretty amazing. You'll have a backup generator for electricity in there?
Yeah, I think some of this is quite phenomenal design. So I spoke about the fact that it's higher off the ground, it's less vulnerable than the old pump station. I think the electricity components, I think we're external and now within the building, so that offers a layer of protection as well. And yeah, I think the two pumps themselves, they back up themselves. They're also operationally cheaper to run because they work off sensors now, and they're not off timers. So actually, when they're not needed, they're shut down, and it doesn't need the manpower. So it's a pretty smart system that will serve us well for 50 years.
It's just that you see it now in the event that's happened up north, that some areas are without power now for 3 weeks.
Yeah,
ridiculous.
Yeah, it's a long time. Yeah.
When we found the cost of having the environmentally friendly pumps, we did have quite a conversation, because it was much more expensive than we expected, but its capacity is much greater, and I think with what we've seen in recent months, eye-watering, but I think it's a good investment.
Grant?
Yeah, just in terms of modelling, so does Environment Southland have the models available to overlay what has happened up north in terms of the rainfall event, and then flow that through our river systems to see where the water would go? Are we at that point?
Not quite. We've got LiDAR information that's coming, and I think most of the region's waiting for some of the LiDAR stuff to come through, so that's not too far away. And overlaying that with the hydrological models that we'll build, that's the piece of work that you're referring to, that we're taking on the slide, the master plan approach, which is bring all of those components together. A lot of the catchments merge into one here, and I think there's 3 major catchments, and they all work very differently. And so it'd be really interesting when we've got that, and hopefully not, maybe 6 months to a year away, hopefully, we can start to bring that modelling data back, and you can start to see. I had the benefit of seeing Westport's version of it, and it was very enlightening, really good information.
Yeah, and supplementary, sorry. So are the other regional councils looking to pull resources around the building of those models, or are they just building them independently? I know they'll be different for different river systems, but there'll be some fundamental infrastructure behind those models that surely they're sharing across New Zealand, as opposed to every
Yeah.
council spending the money
Yeah,
themselves.
I think we are, and especially across the South Island, not just on this, but on a whole other range of issues, we're actually working together. Yeah, we can't afford to have every scientist in each building. You might have a specialist in a consent area. So we're doing what we can to actually leverage off the larger group. And of course, the regional sector did put a paper together that did probably, Basil Jackson, who was Taranaki at the time, pointing out to government that the amount of infrastructure that the flood bank system actually protected. So that work is ongoing. You get down to a specific thing, but we've actually had some expertise that had worked in Hawke's Bay and other places down here giving us that advice. So where we can, we're trying to do that. Yeah. But even on the modelling, most of our rivers are a bit slower moving, and our guys had it pretty right for 2020 on the Mataura. So we get more warning, but yeah, you've still got to have a plan in place.
Any other questions? Oh, sorry, Evelyn.
Kia ora, Chair Horrell. Just a question about the experience that the Tairāwhiti had with timber slash. Have we done any investigatory work on what might be the risk factors for our infrastructure if the worst happens and it's a heavy rain event on areas that are being deforested within Southland? Because as you travel, sometimes you see that there's been some quite significant deforestation has taken place. How much risk have we got?
I think we're in a slightly better position. We've had a voluntary agreement with most of the larger forest people for quite some time, and you don't. But I've been saying to ministers for some time when they talked about intensive winter grazing, buffering is important. It's important for forestry as well, and obviously that conversation is going on in the North Island at the moment. And it's an event they've never seen before, but had they left, at the bottom of the hill, and that was you would have solved a lot of that stuff. And I think we'll get more coming out of it. The other thing is, what do you do if your cell phone towers go down? We've probably got to look at some of the more basic stuff that everybody's been throwing out. So there's always lessons. We've had one or two people up there because to share the learnings, support, but the learnings to bring back down as well.
Larry.
Yeah, is it when we had our last big flood? Kennington was a big one out there. With all of the timber that's out there now, it blocked up the bridge, and then I think they had to take the pressure off and take out one of the stop banks. Have you talked to them out there, the timber place, about
I don't
securing their timber?
I don't know specifically. I'm certainly happy to go away and ask that question. I know that part of our annual inspections, our maintenance program, where we walk the stop banks and look at risks, the adjoining landowners are part of that risk assessment. But I'm certainly happy to go away and ask if we've had specific conversations with specifics, activity around specific activities.
Yeah, Ria.
Kia ora, thank you for your delivery today. I've got a question really. So I'm trying to get my head around some of the technical data that you've just given us, and the hydrological data. Am I understanding correctly that once you collect that data and it's working and doing everything you want it to do, then the ability is it will give us a predictive collection of information that may give us future advice of where we do and don't build in terms of water flow? Because I see from a lot of the event in the North Island is the severity of the amount of volume that was dumped in that weather event, in the cyclone, along with other natural or man-made issues going on. With that, if you had the right information for that predictive data, and we found that we had to do some considerable work to improve our infrastructure here, you would then apply to government for infrastructure upgrades. That would include information from the regional group here.
Well, you're absolutely correct around why that data is important and what it would be used for. Yeah, we've currently we're finalising our government funded projects. We're nearing the end. Hopeful there potentially could be more government funding, but I think the data that we needs to be on the shelf ready to go at any given time where the funding is available. So if funding is available and we've got that data and it tells us that if we build certain infrastructure in certain ways it'll work, but I can't talk about whether that funding will materialise or not. I'm not sure. Certainly we have the opportunity through our own long-term plan processes to do it.
What LiDAR will do is actually give us real confidence on areas where we shouldn't be boarding on in the future, where you could actually divert water. There's a lot of talk about managed retreat, but the first part of managed retreat is actually going to be quite firm on where we should not be building in the future, because the managed retreat argument is hugely expensive. Government will probably, but they haven't even set up a fund yet.
Right.
But the first thing is to be all on the same page, because we know that developers will come along and take you to the court and say, no, we can do this. So some of this data is going to be very powerful in actually saying, no, this is what we know.
Okay. So, if I may, a supplementary to your answers, given we are currently facing legislation under the Three Waters reform, how do you foresee this predictive data placing Southland in an importance of funding mechanisms?
I guess that's a political question. Well, I guess I'm pleased that both the major parties are not moving away from actually dealing with the issue. I mean, it's a bit like the flood banks. There's been no government funding has gone into infrastructure for the last 30 years, and we've now got a huge legacy. Whatever the answer is, and we can argue about a centralised model, but at the end of the day, there's got to be funding available, and there may be some. If it changes, there could be smaller structures, because some small councils would be almost impossible to do. So we've actually got to have a mature debate about that, and I'd like to see a bit of cross-party agreement at some stage going forward, because we do need to deal with those issues, and otherwise we're going to have ongoing issues. And I talk about five waters. If we don't deal with stormwater and wastewater, we're not going to solve the problems in our estuaries and our rivers.
Thank you.
Rangi.
No, it's okay.
Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah, Alex?
Thank you, Mayor Clark. I've just got kind of one question. It's really just for clarification in my own mind about how managed retreat may be managed. With currently, like if it was put through the whole system, and like you said, if developers want to develop in a specific area and the district plan currently allows for it, but the hydro data appears that that's going to be really low-lying land that gets flooded, or we manage floodwaters in that area, it will get flooded out. What is it that will be the mechanism that prevents that? Is that going to be wrapped into the new RMA changes, and it be at a RMA regional level where that development will be, whether or not you can develop there will be controlled, or will that still sit with councils under the district planning sort of framework?
We don't know exactly where it's going to land, but your spatial plans, all these things are going to point us in that direction, I guess. Because as you know yourself, you might get somebody saying, well, we don't really want you to build there, but if they've got the land, they're pretty determined to do it. And we still want to be, I'm pretty strong on local decisions, but we need the right regulation behind us to be able to enforce those decisions. Because further down the track, they'll say, why did you let them build it?
Yeah, exactly. So at the moment, we'll have that data, but nothing to actually back it up legislatively.
I'm not sure what we've got in the existing RMA. Paul might be more.
No, I probably need to go away and come back and answer that more comprehensively for you. I suppose from it, there's obviously going to be wider benefits to the data, and I suppose that's the conversation. And we need to come back and share with you. That's when we have it. I expect it'll be quite a illuminating experience, because the data will be quite rich and show us lots of different scenarios, and yeah, it can be used for multiple purposes, and I think that's why on the slide it says we need to continue to work together and use it. Yeah.
No more questions. Just to wrap up for you two guys. Some interesting debate currently over urban development and the I guess the need to build upwards, not outwards, in some cities. And it was really interesting. A couple of debates in the last couple of days on TV early in the morning about the need to, if you go up 10 stories, instead of going out 10 sections, you leave the land around it with an ability to absorb water. You start covering everything with tarmac, driveways, streets, and everything else. You're creating a bottleneck somewhere down the line. So while we've had this future, and it's not just for the city, there'll be pockets out in the rural areas as well that have traditionally spread out that they may need to think about some ability to lift upwards as well. So yeah, interesting future for you two guys, and thanks very much for your presentation.
Thanks for the opportunity, and thanks for your leniency over the public forum, but it's good to have these conversations.
Yep. Thank you, Nick. Thank you, Paul. All right. So now that our guests are gone, just to, it was remiss of me before not to welcome the two new Michaels that are sitting beside me. So I rose between two Michaels, as it were. So everybody likes code. So M1 over here and M2 over here. Obviously, the new chief executive at his first meeting, and Michael's coming in from a governance perspective as well to give us advice that Claire used to help with, so that I don't head us down the wrong path on something. So if we just want to work our way through the agenda now, we've got a whole series of minutes that we'll just skip our way through, and please yell out if you need to have any discussion about something. Oh, sorry, yes. And we do have one late item, which we just need approval for. So it's the long-term plan, Our City with a Heart, City Centre Land Holdings. So that's in relation to ICL and and the paper brought up by Andrew. So if I could just have Leslie, not Darren. Yeah, excellent. yeah, just in case you couldn't see what you were putting your hand up for. So that all those in favour?
Aye.
Carried. So just working through these minutes, the first set of minutes is the minutes of the Southern Regional Heritage Committee meeting, and this goes back to the 23rd of September.
I'll move those pro forma.
Yeah, thank you.
I'll second them pro forma.
Yeah, thank you. Any discussion on the minutes that are in front of you? There being none, all those in favour of accepting them?
Aye.
Aye.
Carried. Second one is the minutes of the extraordinary meeting of the Community Wellbeing Committee, which is yours, Darren.
Move to be received.
Yeah, thank you. Grant, seconded. All those in favour?
Aye.
Thank you. Minutes of the council meeting held on the 31st of January.
Move that way.
Thank you, Leslie. And Barry, any discussion on those? Yes, Grant?
Just on board box page 32, there's reference there, moved from Councillor Soper and seconded Councillor Grant. So that, I'm not sure there's a grant around the thing unless it's me, so it should be.
I think it might be you. we can have that amended when we get there. Any other discussion? There being none. All those in favour?
Aye.
Carried. Minutes of the Infrastructure Committee meeting held on the Tuesday the 7th of February. Rangi.
Yeah, I'll move that they be received.
Yeah, seconded by Pania. Any discussion? Oh, sorry, my mistake, Pania. Yeah, I got you. Seconded, please. Grant, I've got you. Or Councillor Grant. Just for the record. All those in favour?
Aye.
Carried. Minutes of Bluff Community Board meeting on the Monday the 13th of February.
Happy to move those.
Yes, thank you, Leslie. Yeah, Darren, always a good backup. Any discussion on those? There being none, all those in favour?
Aye.
Carried. Minutes of the Community Wellbeing Committee on the 14th of February.
Move they be received.
Thank you, Darren. Trish as well, thank you. Any discussion? None. All those in favour?
Aye.
Carried. Minutes of the Extraordinary meeting of the Infrastructure Committee on Tuesday, the 14th of February.
I'll move that they be received.
Thank you, Rangi.
I'll second.
Yeah, thank you, Alex. Any discussion on those? No? All those in favour? Carried. Minutes of the extraordinary council meeting on Monday, the 20th of February. Yeah, Barry, thank you. Second day. Yes, Rangi, thank you. Any discussion? There being none. All those in favour?
Aye.
Carried. Minutes of the Finance and Projects Committee hearing on the Tuesday, the 21st of February. Grant, thank you.
Seconded.
Second, Leslie. Any discussion? There being none. Now moving on to some core business. So the first paper up, which Michael's, oh, is it Trudy? Or you? It's you. Excellent. Well done, Trudy. So it's a paper on the attendance register for elected and appointed members. Dated, the results from November through to January this year. The floor is yours, Michael, or M2.
Koto koto. Thank you, Mayor Clark. It's a bit longer of a journey from up there down
Yeah.
here. Right, so this is the first time that we have presented something like this to council. It is in response to a regular Lagoima request most councils get from our friends in the media. And I believe, but I don't speak for them, that they see it as a way of holding elected members and appointed members to account to make sure that you are actually attending your meetings. I don't make any comment on that. That's not my role, but that is what I understand the media use it for. The purpose of this is that each quarter we will present a summary of the quarter, and then it will go up onto our website, being proactively released to the media. And so with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
All right, so before you jump in, Pania and others.
Just want to have one correction made for me, please. I was in attendance on the 31st of January at the council meeting, and you've got not attended. And the other thing is, just another thing, you've got DNA against me for the further discussion on RMA reform submission. That's not in my diary, which I can show.
So Michael, just a couple of things for me. On the second page, it talks about when an elected member is absent, but just want to clarify, absent does not mean Zoom.
No, absent means.
So I want to be sure about that.
Not
So if somebody's
attending a
zooming in, it's still there. The other, I guess, issue for me is the whole nature of the report. Now, I know we have to provide reports, but it feels a little bit uneasy for me. I'll let other people discuss this because I've had some discussion about it with some other colleagues as well. This is a little bit of a microscope over attendance. And one thing about when we first started off this council, what seems like a million years ago, we talked at length about it's about the quality of work that you put into council as an elected member, not how often you attend meetings. I could show you people that attend meetings that don't put in a lot in the past, and others that don't attend so much but do a lot of quality work. So I guess there's some degree of unease around what happens for the people amongst our group that have full-time jobs. And I know 2 years ago when we had the LTP workshops, they were very intense, and I can't remember, but it was a couple of dozen, maybe even up around 30 of them. And if you were in a full-time job, or even anything close to that, it was just near impossible to get to those workshops. So I do balance that out against the need for staff to get a feel from us in these workshops, and then not come back at a later stage and have a whole lot of councillors saying, well, actually, don't agree with that. I know I wasn't there, but I want to change tack now, because that just doubles up the workload, and we can't afford that. So there is definitely a balance between the two. But I just think it's a little bit prescriptive. And I know we have to keep data, but I'm not sure whether this is the way to do it, but I'm open for other people to have some input into it. Alex.
Thank you, Mayor Clark. I'm in a bit of an agreement about part of it. I don't have any problem with it being recorded, but I would like it recorded factually. There's two incorrect ones for me here as well, looking back at my records. One is the 31st of the 1st Extraordinary Community Wellbeing meeting, which was before the council meeting that very same day, which I'm recorded as an attendee, and the chair can also confirm that I was definitely there. And the 8th of the 11th, which was Extraordinary Council and then Infrastructure on the same day, I'm recorded as, it just says MEMB, which should be in attendance as well. I think Mayor Clark makes some really good points as well. There are some of us here that have families and full-time jobs, and I think it's really important when it comes to democracy, because a lot of us, you know, like you have one foot in the real world as much as you have one foot in the political world, and maintaining that diversity and balance of people right across the board is really important for reflection of our community. So removing all of the barriers to entry and ensuring that we do have a really long lead up to when these meetings are scheduled is really important. So I'm looking forward to working with the Mayor on making sure that happens in the future.
I guess, Michael, just for your benefit, when we started this term, we very much had a different approach to committees. So we haven't got most people on most committees type stuff. We've allowed people to select where they feel comfortable. If you don't have a finance background, then probably being on the finance committee is not the best place to be. Some would argue you should be there to learn, but I mean, and the same for risk and assurance, which is quite a specialised area. And you don't want people just attending because they feel as though they have to attend or make up numbers. So I guess I just want to make sure that we've got the mechanism right here that people who don't need to be at some areas, so for argument's sake, if somebody wasn't on a risk and assurance committee or wasn't on the finance committee and we had a workshop about that going forward, you wouldn't expect them to really attend, I wouldn't have thought. No. Given that the outcomes of the workshop will go to those committees where they're not attending. So I just want to know there's some flexibility there without people saying, well, so-and-so did 95% last term, the other person only did 85. I mean, there's a lot of work that goes on away from these workshops as well, like for argument's sake, what Nigel's doing.
No. Absolutely, Mayor Clark, I agree entirely. This is but one measure of public accountability.
Sure.
One of the advantages of having it presented to council is that you will get to see it, whereas otherwise a Lagoima request would come through and it wouldn't actually be something that you would see until it's reported.
Yeah.
Which is the advantage. I absolutely take your point. There are other, we can modify how we capture these to reflect that not everybody, as you say, is on each committee, to ensure that that is perhaps clearer, because I think at the moment it just shows NA saying that they're not on that committee. So it's a bit of a blunt tool.
Sure.
That's what we've got at the moment, but yes, absolutely, we will be able to refine this as we gather more data.
Yep, thank you. Any other questions? Yeah, Alan.
I sort of agree with Mayor Clark. These things obviously need to be recorded, because if you are asked, you need to give the answer. But I just sort of have a couple of wee issues with it, because, like, to me, it's just a record of whether you're here or not. And to be honest, I agree that it's more about the input of your decision making as opposed to your attendance. And I just see this, I know it sounds a wee bit silly, but a wee bit schoolboyish. Now, if you were professional people to run for council, then I don't believe that a lot of them would like to be put under a microscope so much. As I said, now there are rules, as we know, that if you don't attend 4 meetings, you know, you're deemed to be absent. I don't think there's any need to have it publicly displayed. It's got to be there, because if you are asked, you should give it, and as you should. But the thing is, every 3 years we are held accountable for our decision making and what we do, and whether we attend or don't attend. And of course, as you know, those things do come up during elections. That the press will ask, and it gets published. So be it. But I don't think it's something that we should actually put out on a regular basis, just to show who's here, who's not here, who goes to workshops. And as say, there's no requirement to go to workshops, legally speaking. And a lot of us do have families, do have other businesses. And if you want our sort of people to run for council, then I don't want to be put under a microscope like this, that I attended or didn't attend. I mean, I run for council because my intention is to attend and contribute to good decision making. That's why I'm here. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here. And I think that a lot of the people here are like that these days. Not here because none of us are here for our income. I don't believe. We're here to do a job. So I don't think you need something like this. To me, this is a wee bit kind of childish in some respects. Just my view.
Yeah, I'll come back to the two, and I guess just a caveat to that, Michael, I do understand that you've got to keep records, because like email requests will come around to ask us anyway. And the flip side of the debate that Alex and I and Alan have had, of course, is that if we regularly have a look at this report, and we've had people here today say, actually, I was still at the meeting there, you've got it wrong, you can remember it. A year later, it's way too late, you'll never remember. And then when you go to release something, you're going to have 13 people scrabbling all over the top of you saying, look, you've got it wrong. So I understand where you're coming from too. Yeah, Leslie?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. You've made one of the points I was going to make, which is
Sorry about that.
it's far better to look at this at an attendance register fairly contemporary to the attendance if there are going to be corrections. And just slightly contrary to what Councillor Arnold said, I think it is a necessary part of a council that an attendance register is kept. And I actually think it's a good idea that we don't hear about it 2 or 3 years after the event, but are going to see it on a regular basis, which means those corrections have been made. I mean, let's deal with requests under Lagoima as practically as possible by having the information to hand, rather than getting the request and then scrabbling about to provide the information. And I also acknowledge the requirement under standing orders that we have the record kept. It just seems to me it's sensible that we're seeing it from now on a regular enough basis to be able to correct it in plenty of time for it to be the actual record. I also point out that the legend that is actually with the attendance register does make it quite clear that there's some categories where people aren't members of the committee and have or have not attended the committee for interest's sake, and I think there might be a couple of other categories that could be added to the legend, but I did think that the legend categories were probably as descriptive as you can make them for the purpose.
Thank you, Councillor.
And just adding to what Leslie said there, one of the issues that has come up is that if I'm not on a committee, say I'm not on the Risk and Assurance Committee, and you run a workshop like we've had today around risk, why would I come to the workshop if I've got no interest in the committee? So, I mean, there is always the educational side of it, and I accept that, but again, we've got to balance out the need for not just to have the council full of people that can do this as a bit of a full-time job.
No, absolutely, and I acknowledge that, Mayor Clark. So perhaps as a way forward, continue to present these reports on a quarterly basis, but don't publish them on our website. Yeah. Just keep them as part of the agenda.
That'd be helpful.
Certainly getting that as a sense of more comfort around the table. And we will work what we're going to do with the workshops and bring that to you at the next quarter. Yeah. To show how we're going to report that.
That'd be helpful. Yeah. Hang on, Tom. Evelyn.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I wanted to acknowledge that I personally think it's important. There's been quite a lot of challenges made about the representation of mana whenua, the fact that people can see that we come to all the meetings that we are supposed to. We also come to the meetings like this one where we have no vote, but we are still both here. It's important both for the people for whom we are the representatives and spokespeople, but also for the public to see that it's not just lip service. We actually do attend, we do participate. So I actually appreciate this record. I asked for it when I was doing my accountability back to my group, my runaka, and it wasn't available to me in this format, and I appreciate it very much, and I thank you for the effort that is taken to collate all this information.
Yeah, Tom.
Apologies if somebody else has suggested this, but I mean, it seems to me that once it appears in the agenda, it's become a matter of public record. For that reason, it's important to be right, I think, before it appears. And I wonder whether there's an opportunity for Michael's team to perhaps circulate it a couple of weeks in advance so that people can actually look at it and, you know, challenge or say, hey, look, you've missed something, so that by the time it does appear in the agenda, it's correct.
Yeah.
Yep.
Happy to take that on board.
Yep. Yes. Thank you. Any further discussion?
Happy to move recommendations 1 and 2.
Thank you.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Leslie. All those in favour of the recommendations, and there are 3 of them. Aye. Carried. All right. The next paper, M2 again.
It's a continuation on. As you are aware from the very inaugural meeting, I indicated that your delegations register, the Council and Finance one, is a living document and will be subject to amendments from time to time. This is the second set of amendments to it. We are simply doing two changes. We're adding in the new role of Chief Financial Officer, as Patricia's role, to ensure that she has financial delegations and the ability to sign matters off. And there will be also updates coming to the Chief Executive delegations, just to tidy that up. And we've also added in non-financial performance indicators to the Finance and Projects Committee, because that only had financial performance indicators, and it was appropriate that it had its non-financial indicators that were within its scope of business to be included in there. And then there's, so that the two key changes to the delegations register that are up today. And then the last one is just an update on Bluff delegations. Towards the end of last triennium, the Bluff Community Board indicated that they were unhappy with their level of delegations, and we undertook to do some work with them so that they could see what that could look like. That project is underway, and we hope to be having a workshop with them in April, noting of course that any change to the delegations must come through this council, but it was an opportunity for Bluff to explore what they currently have and to understand what they would like to be able to do, so that it can be brought to this council for consideration, understanding what the community board would like to achieve in Bluff. So it's simply a note at this stage that work is underway, because the last thing we of course wanted was the council to be surprised by a request for changes to the Bluff delegations.
Just one piece of feedback that I've already spoken with Michael is the introduction on page 70, where it lumps together mana whenua and elected members, so they are two different designations. It would be my preference that below elected members you have another title before you get the chief executive that might say something like mana whenua appointed representatives, and their role as advisory to both committees and to full council. I think that would better clarify, because that smudges that they have, and I don't want to belittle their roles, but that they don't have responsibility for decision making, and that's just need some clarification. If that could happen, that would be great.
Thank you, Mayor Clark. That will absolutely be done. There will be a further delegations amendment coming through to the March council meeting. Something else has come up that was too late to incorporate in this change, but that will be an opportunity for us to make that change as well.
Sure. Rangi.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Michael, just some clarity around, I'll start with part A, the introduction, and highlighted in black, elected members, chief executives and council officers. Under chief executive, it says dash who is the sole employee of the elected members. Okay, so it states that. Then we go across to the key council's principal responsibilities. That's paragraph 2.3, and it says that a local authority should be a good employer. Now, can you clarify if that means that council is a good employer to Michael, or is it a broader sense? Because I'm just following on from that, and it was my understanding that us 13 elected members have one employee.
Yes, so it is one of those tricky parts of the Local Government Act 2002, and that the chief executive is council's sole employee. However, council also has obligations to all the employees that the chief executive employs to be a good employer. It is.
I'm just trying to work out where it says that.
Yeah, so that is it's in the Local Government Act.
I can help you, Michael.
Yes, go, please.
For those who were around here last term, when we had a debate about whether the chief executive of the time could reduce the wages down by 25 or 50% during COVID. And the advice we got from Ricky Donnelly was that while the chief executive signs an employment contract with each employee, that the tail end of that contract says specifically on behalf of the city council as the corporate body. So we do have some obligations to things like well-being and what have you, that it doesn't leave us the moment we employ Michael. We have an obligation not to necessarily provide that well-being, but to ensure that it is provided.
Right.
That's the advice we got from Ricky.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's just following on from a previous discussion. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. Thank you.
Any other questions? Excellent. So we have a paper with 4 recommendations. You know where this is going to. Thank you, Darren, and thank you, Leslie.
Happy to do so.
Yeah, all those in favour?
Aye.
Carried. The next paper is our City with a Heart. Rhiannon.
Kia ora koutou. So this paper is a opportunity for Council to consider the elements that it wants to confirm for the long-term plan as we work to that next plan that will start 1st of July 2024. So it's really a procedural report. It enables the officers to continue work on all the elements as we work together towards that plan. The City Centre workshop that was held last week was the first one that we have live streamed to the public, so the public will have seen or had the opportunity to see many of those conversations, and this paper summarises and brings those points for Council's consideration. Happy to take any questions.
Yeah, just a reflection for you, Rhiannon. I get good feedback from the community about us live streaming workshops wherever possible. People are getting to hear about it and see a lot more transparency and understanding of our thinking as we lead into things. The report for me is a really good one. It touches on some contentious issues, which is great because that's what we need to go to. Certainly the issue of improving non-heritage buildings, which you've got in there as a paper coming forward. I think when we talk about events, the event on Saturday down in Air Street was great. Went down there at 11 o'clock and thought this is going to be pretty dull, and an hour later it was just there were people everywhere. So that's an opportunity for us going forward to have more of those type of weekends, events in the streets that really encourage that in the city heart. And I was pleased that you also signalled the issue about the corner of Kelvin and Tay, which I see we've got a late item for that as well. So yeah, no, well presented. Darren. That's all right.
Thanks. Look, it's a pretty accurate reflection of what we went through last week. Having chaired that workshop, I was really pleased with the level of engagement and the manner in which the discussion took place. And as we pointed out at the time, it was just the starting point of a conversation that gives staff a direction to go off, which we're formalising today, to come back with papers which we then consult and discuss in public. So as a procedure, I'm happy to move the recommendations.
Yeah, Leslie.
And I'm happy to second them as a block because I actually think it's a very good summary of where we got to and the expectation that we had for some meaty papers to be presented, which would carry us further forward. So I'm very happy to second them, all 9 of them.
Yep. And so, sorry, Grant.
Yeah. Thanks, Rhiannon. I think it's a pretty good reflection of our discussion. Just one sort of point on page 104, just around Wapna Place. The options that are going to come back are going to be for Wapna Place or a successful public place, a street and development site in the CBD. So what I'm asking is, are we just looking at, okay, what do we do with Wapna Place? Or are we saying, where can we have a public place in a city, that fits into our city with heart in other areas around the CBD?
So the report in April will deal specifically with option for Wapna Place, but this paper asks the team to consider Council's priority that it's wanting to have a meeting place. So it will suggest and consider alternatives, but it is specifically focused on Wapna Place. But if I can be clearer, it will explain the implications and provide some alternatives, but it may be that those alternatives then may need to be further scoped.
Yeah, so sorry, secondary question.
Sure, yeah. Get out.
Yeah, I think it's really important that we see, how we can achieve some of the things that the paper outlines, so a gathering place and a place where people can play and those sorts of things. But we look at that with a pretty clear lens. We don't just get funneled into, we're just going to make Wagner Place be this place, if that makes sense. So I think, we need to see what different areas around the city potentially could be developed up into what we're trying to achieve for a city with heart.
Shall I really let you talk? Yes.
Your
Stephen.
call, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, I know Manchester United had a big win over the weekend. Yes.
Look, in response to that question, Councillor, we will be, as part of our urban play work, reviewing the broader location and how we might see play dispersed throughout the CBD. So we will be looking at other places aside from Wagner Place and in terms of how we deliver that vibrancy.
Yeah, Rangi.
Yeah, obviously I see this as the first step, and that's really no more than the first step, because the options for gathering space, as discovered in the weekend, if S Street was managed whenever it suited best to be closed off, it provides a brilliant gathering space. Nothing comes close to it. And vibrancy and accessibility. So all those things, but they have to be done in conjunction with approval of the retailers and things like that. So I see this as the first step, and then all that information is going to come. So we just need to sit back.
Just for your benefit, Rhiannon, I've had quite a bit of feedback on both sides of that Wagner Place discussion. There are some people that die in a ditch before we ever touched the place. It's been there for a long time. And yet the young people that we've spoken to recently are quite clear they want a place to hang out, using their words. A place where on a weekend they could have some pizzas, it'd be covered, they can have a big screen, they can have some stubbies if we relaxed our licensing laws or whatever. So there is a definite need there from that younger group, and they're the future of our city. Yeah, Pania.
Yeah, thank you. No, this was a really good exercise. Some of the feedback I sort of got is, why don't we shift the state highway to go around the CBD rather than through it? So that was a different option that they thought was of benefit, so that it flowed right through to Wagner Place.
Yeah.
Kia ora, thank you, Rhiannon, for recording what happened at the workshop so well. The one thing that, as I walked around the city afterwards, I thought about with the potentially reopening Wagner Place was, how would that work with S Street being a one-way street on this side and potentially not being a one-way street on the other side, in terms of if that was an option to open it back up to traffic, and also looking at how tight that area has now become. That would mean, to me, it would seem to mean remodelling the median strips in the middle, and I thought that was a bigger exercise than what we were actually thinking about or talking about. But I guess for a lot of people, they've become used to the safety aspect of how no traffic coming at you from that direction, because it's quite a short space. So that was just the feedback I got, that they felt like it was less safe with traffic going through the way it used to be, and particularly what would the challenges be with S Street now being a one-way street, and potentially the other side perhaps being two-way. So.
There are lots of factors to consider.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, Aaron.
Oh, that's okay. I think I just wanted to add to the picture just around traffic potentially in Wagner Place, and it's only one of the options being explored. But I think that what we've seen in S Street is that, and we will see when we do reopen it to traffic, is that having a space that has traffic and pedestrian can look different to perhaps what we've traditionally perceived as a trafficable space as well. So I think when we talk about having it open to traffic, it may not look the way it used to when it was a trafficable space. It may look something more like Esk Street looks now, but those are the options we'll explore.
Sure, and I'll come to you in a minute, Rangi. And just adding to that, we've had a lot of, I guess, community feedback, online feedback that why don't you just leave Esk Street closed? And then it'd be great, you can wander through, no cars, no vehicles in there. And obviously the retailers were not comfortable with that, so I shared that recently with councillors. But it was really interesting when we closed it off last weekend and we opened it up, I went down again and went past the retailers and said, how do you feel about this? And they were just blown away by it all. So that have the ability to bring that foot traffic in was great. So yeah, like you say, Aaron, I think there's some new thinking to go around some of this stuff. Rangi.
Look, just it seems to be overlooked, but stands out quite strong to me are the 4 pillars of knowledge that stand there in D Street. I'm just wondering what the future of those will be. Darren looks like
no. I just want to say we're actually getting into this discussion that'll follow on from the options that are being presented in these papers.
We just don't see them mentioned, obviously, as something that needs to be considered. Sure. I mean, this is the type of thinking that they could just be overlooked because it's too hard. It's the elephant in the room, and I just don't want them to be overlooked.
I'm sure Rhiannon will have that covered off.
We did talk about that at the workshop, Mr. Mayor. We did actually mention those as part of the of the issues.
Yep. Grant, did you want? No.
No.
Any further discussion? There being none, I've got a mover and a seconder, same 2 each time. For those 9 recommendations, all those in favour?
Aye.
Carried. And the last one we've got on here is the adoption of the fees and charges for 2023-24. Oh, sorry, being mindful that this is just a discussion document, isn't it? It's not set in place, so we're not looking for anything more than just some background information here.
Thank you, Mayor. So this is the fees and charges schedule for consultation. So just to be really clear, what we are asking today is that you adopt this for consultation, and we will take it out to the community for their feedback. We will contact various groups that may be particularly affected by some changes in the fees and charges, which you can see highlighted within the paper. I would just like to draw your attention to the fact that we have made some minor corrections to the fees and charges, and there is a more recent version that has been uploaded into your agenda. That is just the words "for consultation" on the front page were missing. There's a corrections on page 3 around some of the corporate fees that had just been copied across incorrectly, and a correction to the menacing dog fee, which was incorrectly calculated. It states on page 6 that it was $154. It should have read $156. I'd also, if possible, like a additional recommendation to be added, just to delegate to the Chief Financial Officer to make any final corrections of non-significant matters ahead of consultation. Just if we pick up any further typos, etc. The report does speak to the work that Council with the officers and managers and support has been doing to ensure that the amount of revenue that we collect from fees and charges is set at an appropriate level, both in relation to the legal requirements and the policy requirements from the revenue and finance policy, and from the fact that we knew from last year's annual plan that we over a number of years need to just make sure we are collecting the appropriate revenue from fees and charges, because if we are not, then that increases the rates revenue that needs to be collected. So I'm happy to take any questions.
Just the one issue which I raised with you before, Ria, which was in Heather's area, who's sitting at the back of the room feeling comfortable, is that when we push up the fees for our housing just need to know the backstory behind that and how that will abate into accommodation supplements available from working income. If we get a snapshot of that. I mean, I don't want it sort of unit by unit, but if we just get some feel for that, I think last time we didn't have that, and it caused us a great storm. And most of the 30% we pushed up last time, it was actually picked up by working income, not by our clients. And so if we could get that again, just to know what the actual impact is, that would be great, I think.
I'll ask my colleague Heather to come to speak to
Sure.
that question.
Yeah. I think she was feeling comfortable she'd get away from all this. So what's your take on it, Heather?
Thank you, Mayor. My understanding is that the majority of our tenants are on a benefit,
Sure.
and as such, that will increase at the 1st of April. Potentially, they will also increase the level of compliance for the accommodation supplement.
Sure.
And so therefore our increase will probably have very little change to their
Sure.
actual final circumstances.
I think if we could get some confirmation from Elliot that working
We-
income, that would be helpful.
We won't know that until Winds put out their actual benefit
Sure.
increases. Sorry, I'm sorry, that's...
Yeah, no, I just think last time we had it, most of our clients actually sat within the ceiling. It was available to them.
Yes, and we've been working with them to make sure
Yep.
that they're getting the right assistance.
Sure, thank you. Tom?
I guess the point I was going to make, Mayor, is pretty much the same one that you made. It seems to me that while we can look at these charges and almost nod them through, the one that does require, I think, some discussion and debate is the question of increase in rental.
Sure.
Because although it's $7 or so, you know, $7 to people who cannot afford $7, and we pretty much know that. I don't know how much of the increase in allowances it's going to take up, but I you know, I think at this point we do need to talk a little bit more about whether it's appropriate to increase those charges.
Just to give you help from last term, I think at one stage we were pushing up the average about $30 a week, and there was a human outcry, you would expect. People sitting in here with placards, and Beneficiaries Union was in here backing them up. But what we found out was that 27 of the 30 was actually picked up by the accommodation supplement, which means Winds pays for it. They get an allowance for that. So the real cost was only $3 or $4 a week, which was quite minimal. And once they knew that, that was fine. But the key is just not to go down to that debate again if we can avoid it. Yeah, Rangi.
Yeah, well, following on from that, I think if you see the increase in the transfer station charges reflect that user pays, is that these people in this accommodation would never fill a red bin or the recycling bin. So those who do frequent the transfer station a lot for various reasons will be paying the appropriate levels that they should be to offset things. So I think it's a good tack, the whole methodology behind the fees and charges.
So Rhiannon, just on what Rangi just said though, but this doesn't affect the person that goes down and stuffs some stuff through the slots on the side of the building. It's really the commercial people, isn't it, that recycle?
No, this is a transfer station.
Yeah, but there are commercial people that go into the transfer station that pay a fee for going there.
Will it affect those people going to the transfer station? All the fees will affect everybody going, not commercial and non-commercial. Yeah. And the increase in the minimum fees will obviously affect those who are taking smaller amounts of rubbish. Yeah. But the managers are recommending these changes, having done full assessments of the cost, noting that they still don't cover the cost of providing the service, and that they are still lower than many other councils that are operating in the area. So that hence their recommendation for why they're putting forward the amount that they are for consultation.
Yeah, but what I was trying to allude to is, I mean, I go and I take my plastic containers in and I throw them through the slots. I don't pay for that.
No, this is the rubbish dump, not the recycling. This is where you drive in.
Yep.
Green waste on the left. And
I'm with you.
Yep.
Yes, apologies, Mary, I misunderstood your question.
No, that's all right. That's all good then. Yeah, Trish.
I have some questions about the housing as well. I'd like us to have a really good look at it. It seems to me that when vulnerable people are in a house and they get a chance to get a little bit of increase, then we take it off them. I don't know, I know it's got to be practical, but I would like us to have some further discussion about it.
Yeah, it's an interesting debate that we had last time because one, we're well below the marketplace for these vulnerable people. Two, I think when we did it last time, we had no waiting list, so nobody wanting in, and we were actually accommodating people that had, I guess, a younger age bracket in some cases that were on invalid's benefit as opposed to those that might be on national service. Yeah. Oh, sorry, Darren.
Thanks, Mayor Clark. I guess it's important to understand that if the increase is not just to the benefit but also to the accommodation supplement, then that's only for accommodation.
That's fine if that's all the increases that we're taking.
It could well be that of the $7 or let's say an $8 increase, the client that's in the house or unit may only pay $2. Yeah, and the rest gets gobbled up by the accommodation supplement, unless they've got to the ceiling. And it's quite a generous ceiling, isn't it? Yeah, Alex.
It is worth noting too that the reasons why these provisions are made are also because we've done significant upgrades to bring them up to healthy home standards, whereas they were previously not. So we're making improvements to their home that they're renting off us. So, and we need to be able to fund that in some manner.
I would question that in some houses, but I would like to have a further discussion. I'll perhaps have discussions.
Well, Rhiannon might be able to help you with some of that. I mean, Alex is right. We did get some shovel-ready money. Oh no, sorry, some Three Waters money that went more than $2 million has gone into those homes with air conditioning units. But part of the process last time was to keep ourselves reasonably competitive on the rent. That doesn't mean we want to be higher than anywhere else, but we want to have some ability through what we get for those units to be able to build more units or to turn them over. Otherwise, they just continue to disintegrate. So that was a bit of a challenge for us last time around, and we had a 30% increase. Leslie.
Mr. Mayor, it may be worthwhile for the new councillors to have the paper we received on the plan for us to invest in some future housing, and I do understand that we are at the beginning at least of the process of building some new units, but it may be useful for councillors to see, for the new councillors to see that paper, which did very carefully weigh up the need for us to have that as part of our plan for not only maintaining the current units but looking at expanding our housing stock. And that may be helpful in this discussion. And I just point out we are still well under the average rental for properties of the size of our units in Invercargill.
5 copies, Rhiannon, if you can raise that. You know the document that Leslie's referring to?
Yes. Yes, we will make that available in the resource centre.
I think it would be a good background document for the ones that are new, or the ones that can't remember. Okay. Yes, Michael's. Oh, M1.
Through yourself, Mr. Mayor. The item 4 that you put up, I would ask, given we're in a transition period just at the moment, if you can put in delegate to the Chief Financial Officer and or the Acting GM Finance Assurance. Just because it might be right on transition. Thank you.
Okay, and just yes, in a minute, Alan. Just one thing, just to be mindful that and Rhiannon's already touched on this, that we've got some pretty hefty water rate increases for a number of people. So you're going to write out to them or give them a bit of a heads up, because there are some significant increases there. For sure, Alan.
I was just going to talk about the water actually. I was just going
to
say, as a consumer of water, and I have a water meter. it says that, you know, the cost of delivering the service is $1.57, we're paying $1.54, you're going to increase the cost by 25% instead of, you know, like a 0.03 or something like that. I'm just thinking, if Invercargill was to go to a metered system throughout, which is being proposed in the Three Waters, I think that's sort of going to be one of the outcomes of it. This would be like a major cash cow, wouldn't it, with that increase? It would be, I mean, you know, imagine how much you'd make then.
So just to clarify, this is the fee for the large volume consumers that are collecting water from the system rather than the residential, just to be clear.
Yep.
So it does affect primarily businesses and organisations, but not solely. And yes, we are charging at the moment significantly less than the actual cost of delivering the service. And under the new water entity, it is likely that rates for commercial and large volume users would increase significantly again. Where they would put their cost of delivering the service and therefore the price that they are charging is not yet obviously known at this time. But at the moment, we're recommending this increase as a partial move towards a closer parity to the actual cost of delivering the service.
Sure. So just as a flow on, terrible pun that is, from what Alan raised, the councils that do have water meters and actually don't make money out of them, what they do is they decrease the demand because it's a user pay system. So people use less water because they've got to pay more if they just have 20-minute showers type scenario. So what that does is the savings is actually at the treatment end when you put the water in, and at the discharge end you have less to treat as well. So that's where the savings can go. But the new entities won't discuss water meters at the moment because they're horribly unpopular with about half the population. Okie dokie. Oh, Leslie.
Mick, I just, for the benefit of those watching online, I just wanted to clarify that the reference to $1.54 was actually to the New Zealand average for metered consumers. The $1.57 was Invercargill's cost to deliver the service, but our increase in fees is from the current 76 cents to $1 per cubic metres. So I just didn't want people to have heard the reference to $1.54 and $1.57 and then being confused about the actual increase that's being proposed, which is still not at the level of $1.54 or $1.57.
Yep. Thank you.
Just wanted to clarify that. Not that takes away from the fact that there are some water consumers who we quite rightly will be informing because they are large volume commercial customers, but I just didn't want any confusion to have resulted from those watching online.
Yeah, thank you for that. Tom?
Just reflecting on the housing discussion again, and picking up Dan's point, and I think Leslie's too. I mean, it's not clear to me whether the accommodation supplement increase is going to consume all of that $7 or $9, or whether it's going to consume part of it. I mean, I would just like to hear before we approve that, and I think it's got to go to consultation, and then it comes back to us, doesn't it?
Of course.
I think when it comes back to us, I would like to understand the implications to individuals, what it will actually cost them, as opposed to what it will cost central government, where I'm not greatly concerned. But I would like to understand what it will actually cost them before we approve it next time.
So the process is we are going to go to consultation anyway. Rhiannon and Heather will have that information before we go, because we all get questions on this. We did last time. We probably got the greatest emotional feedback last time about this issue. It was quite strong. So we'll have that information in our back pocket before we go to consult. So when we get those questions, we can answer them. No, Leslie had a hand up first.
Sorry, I just wanted to clarify. We'll be able to give, I guess, some generic information about the impact. But obviously the difficulty is that everybody's personal circumstances impact how much they are able to get in terms of supplement. So we can't, I guess, give you precise details of how it impacts everybody, but we can give you, I guess, a feeling for where a majority might sit.
Thank you. Leslie.
Thanks, Mayor Clark. I was going to make a similar point. We can't, for privacy reasons, go one by one through our current tenants, but it may be that it would be useful to ask either Work and Income or Southland Beneficiary and Community Rights, who submitted last time, for some generic examples that could be provided to councillors, which I think would be helpful for people to understand. For instance, depending on the particular income and so forth, people may not at the moment be eligible for the full subsidy.
Yeah, the key I think is not the subsidy; it's the ceiling it sets for the rent.
Yeah, and
if
many,
you fall below the ceiling, you get the accommodation supplement. If you what portion of your rent goes above it, you don't get it. So you don't get, let's say, all your rent paid for. It goes up to a certain maximum level, and that will move, like you say, Heather, and probably in April this year, because they adjust the benefits every year. So if we can just get some generic figures. I mean, Ali gave me some last time we had that debate, and it was really helpful. It allowed the people that we're dealing with to go away and do their own assessments, or get some help from you to do them. Okie dokie. 3 recommendations on the table. Darren. Oh, Trish. Any further discussion? There being none. Okay, all those in favour?
Aye.
Carried. Yeah, we're at PE. Okay, somebody like to move, we go into PE.
I'll move that way.
Leslie, Darren, thank you very much. All those in favour, say aye.
Aye.
Carried.